Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745, and we're deep in Russia. It is winter, and we are pushing into them slowly, methodically. So, hopefully, effectively. I'm seeing these. Well, that one's not too bad, so you can join that attack. You can join that attack as well. You guys move up there. Okay, we now got a decent amount of divisions up here, so we're going to take all of them and attack there again. I am not going to besiege Leningrad. I am going to try to surround it and cut it off before plunging straight into it. Like that. What other options do we have here? Yeah, we'll do that. Does Arctic work like radios, or are they for specialized division? My understanding, let's come up to a universal one. From just a quick read of it, they enable equipment Arctic Warfare Equipment 1, but enables our Arctic Support Company. So you would have to attack, do a division, not that we can't, but a division template change and add an Arctic Support Company and produce Arctic Warfare Equipment, which we're having production. I don't know if I want to produce some more things at this point, if you know what I mean. So it's something of that as well. I think we're going to add another factory here. Let's do it sort of in the east. Oh, we could do it here. On doctrines. Well, oh, you mean to boost their research rate? I'm guessing is what you mean here. Yeah, it probably would have been a good idea. Yeah, that would have been a good idea. Okay, they're moving up along here, which is good. These guys are pushing there, which is good. Well, oh, there's two divisions there. That's a bit more than I think I want the Bulgarians to fight alongside the Germans with. Okay, so we're pushing up there a little bit here. All right, well. See, I grew up watching the series World at War. It is a great series. I highly recommend it. It is dated the big way it's dated is it was made before the ultra secret, you know, that the Allies had cracked the Enigma codes, well, multiple times, and in some cases reading it faster than the Germans with their IBM decoding, you know, computers. Though mostly it wasn't faster. It just, but it's really good. It's narrated by Laurence Olivier. He was an actor way back when. You guys don't know, but very good actor. Highly recommend it. But within the series, there's a tale of two cities. Not that they call it that. One was the Battle of Leningrad. One was the Battle of Stalingrad. The Battle of Leningrad is a story within this series, and I think it's essentially true, of struggle and starvation by the Soviets to keep the city open. Sure, there was combat along the peripheries of Leningrad, but the struggle was often to get food into it, and it's just a really depressing tale. Where the Battle of Stalingrad is a battle of a battle, you know, fighting in and amongst the rubble, and, you know, a lot of hard combat and battling heroically to defend or take certain positions and all that stuff. And as a kid, it's much more fun to hear about, as opposed to just hearing about people starving and whatnot. But it also is a tale of two different situations, obviously I've just described here, but one in which the Germans, or an attacker, doesn't really matter that it's the Germans, but an attacker attacks a city and fights in the city, and the other one is a tale of surrounds the city. Now they try to take it mostly by starvation. Oh sure, they bring up some heavy guns and artillery and bombard positions in places, and just sort of hope it collapses, shall we say, probe it a bit. And they're definitely fighting, you know, to Lake Lagoda or whatever here that freezes over, that they're, you know, in warmer times, shall we say, you know, they're running, you know, ships, boats, whatever, to resupply Leningrad. When it freezes over, there's truck convoys and other, you know, stuff moving across the ice. I think they may also be doing, you know, just wagons too. But, and so, you know, the Germans are fighting around here most assuredly, and it's, you know, it's a trickle support of a lifeline. It's not 100% surrounded, but it's mostly surrounded, if you will. We're here in Stalingrad. The Germans never cut it off, and they basically don't even try to get across the Volga. At least nothing serious. I mean, they may shoot across it some, but they don't try to get across it. Now, these two lessons, you know, many years ago, as a, you know, a boy, I learned from this. What the Germans should have done at Leningrad was cut the city off like they did, and maybe give it a bit of time to you know, to wear down, you know, while you're pursuing a push to Moscow and whatnot. But at some point, gather your forces, and I know this is hindsight that we're looking at. I'll get back to the chat in a moment. You know, because, you know, the Germans, you know, they don't know that maybe just, you know, a few light probing attacks, and the front line will be sort of empty because either they pulled out or they're all starving and they've run out of ammunition, and it'll just all collapse. You know, you don't know this. This is with hindsight, obviously. But that they should have then done a vigorous assault on Leningrad, because there was, in a practical sense, no way to effectively, notice my words, effectively support a significant battle in that city, either moving in, you know, munitions or reinforcements. Not, you know, because again, notice I said trickle support. You know, they could trickle some support in. Now, so that's what they should have done, because once you take Leningrad, at least, because I know this does ice over up here, and it used to, you know, people, global warming has been happening since the 1700s. People, global warming has been happening since pre-industrialized times, at least in the European hemisphere. I read accounts of like 10 plus feet thick ice in these ports and just sort of icing this thing over. I don't know what it's doing there now in wintertime, but it was huge. And the Thames or Thames River, however you want to pronounce it, at London, which was its first sort of wading crossing point, used to ice over, not during Roman times. It wouldn't ice over during Roman times, but it would ice over in the 1700s, in which you could build wooden structures that would be there for frost fare during the winter. It would ice over. Stopped, I think the last one was around 1805, give or take 2 or 3 years. So pre-industrially, so yeah, global warming is real, because there was a mini ice age, at least in the northern hemisphere in Europe. So, but I don't know that any of it is in any significant way globally, not just because you pave over a bunch of area. Yeah, that'll heat up around a city, so local temperatures will get warmer. But in any significant way that it's man-caused global warming, as opposed to natural causes, shall we say. But by taking Leningrad, you've opened up at least partially a port, rail structures that can be put back into use. You can shift all of the forces that are sort of facing north to face east. If the Finns still refuse to leave their border territories, and it very, very, very well may have changed had you effectively taken Leningrad and taken this area, the Finns might have changed their mind about holding it the, pre-winter war borders, because they would not leave those borders, because they were very much pushing that this was just a continuation war. Had it looked like, whether overall or regionally, that the Germans were going to be victorious, they very well may have decided to, I don't know, try to do a greater Finland or something like that, sort of like what's happening here now. But either way, it would free up a lot of effort here. So taking the city would be, and it's an anchor point, so taking the city strategically would have been very, very effective. And I think it would have hurt Soviet morale, because the Soviets are being fed about, how the valiant defenders of Leningrad are still holding out. Do your best in the factory, do your best at the front line, do your best wherever. They're being fed this propaganda. Once that falls, that sort of falls apart. I've long thought, again, maybe going back to, a boy, that yes, early stages of Stalingrad, they're pushing in and the Germans are doing reasonably well, and they start getting resistance, and they just keep thinking, well, 1 division, 2 more divisions, and if we had them earlier, we would have won this battle. And they're right. Had they had 1 or 2 more divisions in the very early stages of Stalingrad, not just futzing about somewhere, maybe usefully somewhere else, but had they actually had that there, they would have overwhelmed the Soviets. And yes, at some point it is sort of a trickle across the Volga, coming in like it was a trickle into Leningrad. But that ties up so many German divisions there, leaving Hungarian, Romanian, and Italian divisions primarily holding the flanks, which allows for the pincer movement. I've long thought, once they got to something of a, hitting your head against the wall, instead of thinking, oh, we need just a bit bigger hammer and we're going to do it, or a bit stronger helmet to bash our heads into, what they should have done is withdrawn enough divisions, or kept just enough divisions to sort of hold what you've got in Stalingrad, and then push north across the Volga because the Volga is a major supply route in the area, as well as just to Stalingrad, and cut the rail links on the far side. Whether that means fully surrounding it or not is another question, because there is, I don't know that this map shows it well, doesn't. There is sort of a rail link coming down through here. And I think it's more important than the one coming back this way. But had you done that, and had you just cut enough of this and made it to where it's more of a trickle coming in, then you could have pushed into Stalingrad without the ability to reinforce it. So what I'm trying to do here is just what I'm sort of talking about. It should have been done. I'm trying to push here up, push up to here, cut this off, and then push in. Not, we're just going to sit and try to starve them out forever. No, we're going to come up here, we're going to do this. But that keeps them from being able to cycle divisions in and out as, they wear down and then push in. So we're trying to learn the lessons of World War II and how to battle for things. Okay, we need to get both of these. Let's move them to here. Get them on the rails and get going. Let's see. Did Arno? I don't know. Arno may have passed out. Who knows? Oh, you're leaving Sing? Well, sorry, probably you've already left, but goodbye. Thanks for showing up. Yeah, great series. A bit old by now, but many commanders still alive when it was done, and their commentary. Yes, absolutely, Beam Slam. You could take, and I'm sure there's other footage that they, talked to the commanders back then. You could take that and rework it into a more modern series using the interviews and whatnot. But either way, it's still very good. Germans didn't have enough artillery. They didn't have enough of anything. So I don't know what that means. I mean, you're talking about whether besieging Leningrad or Stalingrad, I presume, but and I'll disagree with you. I mean, I agree that Germans didn't have enough of anything. I think the Germans had enough artillery. Okay, I really think the Germans had enough artillery. What the Germans didn't have enough of was ammunition for that artillery. Okay? I think it was the Russians in World War I, somewhere down here, getting ready for some battle. I remember, watching some documentary on World War I. And they had like five rounds or something, or 3 rounds per artillery piece at this point, all spread up. So each gun, had like five shells to shoot. And when they're done shooting it, the gun's out of ammunition, the artillery piece. And that's it. You're done. So it's not always about the number of artillery tubes you have. It's often more about how many rounds those artillery tubes can fire in a day. So I looked at what they deployed for Leningrad siege. It was pittance numbers. Okay, well, and now I think that comes to the I'm not going to disagree with you on that it's a pittance numbers. I think it comes down to the idea that they thought they could starve the city out. So why send in more artillery when you have battles to be fought? You know, it gets back to they don't have enough of anything. And again, I haven't looked at the number. I mean, I'm sure they talk about it and reasonably accurate in, you know, the episode on Leningrad for World War. So I'm sure I've seen it at some point in my life. But is it how many guns you're pointing at Leningrad or how many shells you're firing per day at Leningrad? What really matters? The only reason you need more guns is if the artillery that's sitting here that can sort of shoot here, okay, but there's attacks happening over here, and if you don't have guns over here, well, yeah, they can't, you know, you don't have guns to react here. But if you're talking about a limited front like Leningrad, and the artillery pieces can range over the area of the battlefield, does it matter if you have 10 guns or 40 guns if you have the same number of rounds? If you have 400 rounds sitting there ready to go, and trust me, 10 guns can shoot 40 rounds in a day. Or, you know, so is it those 10 guns shooting the 40 rounds, or is it 40 guns shooting those 400 rounds? You know, it spread out along the front. If you have a large area, yeah, the tubes matter because it can only engage so many positions at once, and especially in World War II artillery, because, you know, modern artillery, basically good modern artillery, you can fire 5 rounds from one gun before the first round lands and have all 5 rounds more or less simultaneously on that one target. So one gun is, you know, can blast a target with 5 rounds. World War II, you can't readily do that. They're getting a little bit of time on target, the Americans are, but that's way late in the war. Mostly it's not. So you don't want to just slowly have one gun. I mean, one gun is sure better than no guns, but you want to have 3 or 4 guns blasting a target at once. So it comes down more to ammo and logistics, the number of artillery tubes. And that's something you have to keep in mind. So had they put just a few guns there because it's a limited front, a few big heavy guns, and if they were feeding them lots of ammo, well, that's effective. Doubling the number of guns doesn't really, you know, at some point for a limited front like a siege of Leningrad, doesn't really matter if you're not needing to task many different artillery, calling for artillery at many different positions. You're just bombarding some area. So number of guns isn't always telling. Now maybe they, you know, each gun every day gets 10 artillery rounds to fire everywhere in the Wehrmacht, you know, or on the East Front. So number of guns would matter just because it's it's the only way they're doing it. So yeah, you have to look at the overall picture. And more guns, obviously, as opposed to just more artillery rounds, more guns mean more gunners and more trucks or even wagons that have horses that you need to supply food and fuel. And horse fuel, of course, is, you know, alfalfa and hay and whatnot, oats and other things. So you more things to supply to the front, where if you're having, you know, trucks or wagons or trains pulling up with your artillery shells, yeah, more artillery shells, yeah, means a little more logistics, fuel and manpower to, you know, move the rounds around, but not hugely more. So more doesn't necessarily equate to better. Now, if you're America and your only problem is do you have enough ports and whatnot to how many rounds you can offload a day? But once you get that solved, it's, yeah, you get, 300 rounds per gun per day? Yeah, no problem. Double the number of guns, you're still getting 300 rounds per gun per day? Yeah, then more guns, more better. You know, it just is, because the American logistics are set up. Because people, again, I want to make this because I know not everybody watches everything. Before World War II, they didn't have the pallet. You know what I'm talking about? The pallet. I know they make plastic ones now, but the wooden pallet that you know, you have there, Germany didn't have it, Britain didn't have it, France didn't have it, Italy didn't have it, Japan didn't have it. It was developed just before or coming into World War II with America, because America developed something called the forklift, in which that would go under and pick up something. And so none of these other nations had. Now, Britain gets forklifts and gets pallets from America as the war's going on, but they don't have it. So the idea that you could have a cheap throwaway wooden pallet that you stack boxes of things on it, secure it in a way, and then have one person drive up with a little forklift and pick that pallet up and move it wherever they want to on a reasonably flat, reasonably smooth surface, which could be, you know, a field, a road, or whatever. It doesn't have to be, you know, perfectly smooth, but you know, you can't go across rough terrain or upstairs. You need to have ramps and whatnot. And so the logistical power of having a train pull up, having a forklift come in, pick up the pallet, drive onto the train car and drop a pallet and drive off, and another one, quickly load that train up. That train goes to a port somewhere. Another forklift comes in and picks those pallets up, takes them to the side of the dock. The dock can then, whether it's like a cargo net, you know, lower the pallet down onto a cargo net or whatever, and put it onto a ship, and the ship then, some of the loading is better and worse, whatever, doesn't really matter, but then you get it off the ship, put it onto the dock next to it, if you have to rebuild it, you know, restack another pallet, and then you're moving those pallets of goods by one person using a forklift instead of 10 people with, you know, carrying the crates or whatever, and you're moving that all the way around, and you're doing those pallets up to literally putting them onto the trucks and breaking the pallets down next to the artillery piece or next to the field kitchen or whatever that you're breaking the pallets down. That is a, you know, a God-tiered weapon in logistics. You got to understand. So the Americans have this, you know, compared to everybody else, and it's only the, you know, people like the British and, you know, the Free French don't even exist enough to do it. And okay, you know, if British and Commonwealth, you know, Australia and wherever else, that are getting to use some of these forklifts. Nobody else has this ability. So it's radically less manpower, radically faster moving of supplies. That is, you know, literally God-tiered compared to everything else in this war. So that alone, the pallet alone, because I often talk about how, particularly with the Germans and the Blitzkrieg, you know, in France with the jerry can, and how the jerry can revolutionizes refueling. Now the Ally and that is sort of God-tiered in 1940. Now by 1942, both the British and the Americans have adopted the German jerry can and learned all the lessons you can learn about from the Germans about how to resupply fuel motorized forces. So both sides are doing that equally, except for the Americans now have pallets that they can put either the big 50-gallon, you know, fuel cans on, or pallets of jerry cans to move those around. So they, you know, step even that up one above it. So you have to understand the war in in those terms to understand why America is undefeatable in a large-scale sense. Sure, you can have the Battle of the Bulge and defeat a few battalions here or there, or the Rangers outside of Rome that get captured, or you can have some stumbles, you can have some local victories against the Americans, but there's no way the Germans, with anything that they're doing, is going to be able to defeat America in this kind of thing. And it's not. I mean, yes, the Americans are eventually become equally competent at the tactical fighting, the soldier and the tanker and whatnot, as the Germans. They weren't that in 1942. Kasserine Pass happens in 1942 or whatever. They weren't that in 42. The British were about their equal but very different tactics as the Germans. And that's the only sort of equal the Germans have, were the British. And the Americans come up to at least being the equal to the... Now, of course, we can look at not all divisions are equal, whether that's on the American side or on the German side, and you have Panzerlehr and Leibstandarte and other really, premier German divisions, certainly. But you look at some of the very good American divisions, they're getting there. And they're definitely the average German division versus the average American division is equally competent. By the time mid 1943 rolls around, I would say the average American infantry division, the average German infantry division are equally competent. Then you throw in the superior American logistics, and you get overwhelmed, and some superior American equipment like the M1 Garand. You get the overwhelming, as well as just like overwhelming, sort of logistics, overwhelming air power and artillery and whatnot. You get it to where the Germans just are not going to be competitive in the long run. Now let's see what you've been saying in chat here. Okay. I remember how Zhukov complained how the Russian artillery has 1 shell per cannon per day. Both sides used a lot of artillery shells without having sufficient industry behind them. Absolutely, Ragar. That's exactly my point. Machine pistol in 2 days. Okay, I think that was one of the ones we're researching. But frankly, Germany had much easier time to supply their armies near Leningrad because they removed Russian ships from the Baltic. Absolutely. And that is a very real thing. I have not watched all of TIK, a YouTuber. I presume you all know who he is. He is still going through his deep dive on Stalingrad. I've only watched a few of the episodes in total and bits and pieces of some of the others. But he is very right that logistics down here is very hard versus logistics up here. And Germany, outside of dealing with North Africa, basically has an easier logistics setup than either Britain or America, in that they have to transport functionally everything across the seas to somewhere else, and maybe multiple times across the seas, from America or from Britain to North Africa, then from the sea, from some supply depot in North Africa to Sicily or something like that. So they have a more difficulty time in fighting the war in that sense. Yes. Russian army still relies on loose boxes even today, taking ages to unload trains. Well, yeah. I've saved I saved pictures and whatnot that illustrate points, and one thing I found on Twitter were 4 pictures. I think they were all about Burger King, and it was either soldiers in Afghanistan or Iraq sitting down eating Burger King meals, or they were loading on to one of the big I'm forgetting the Starlifter or whatever, one of the big cargo aircraft, a sort of portable Burger King store. And there were a couple of Burger King contractors standing around in semi-military uniforms with, Burger King, a low visibility Burger King t-shirt kind of thing. America's, you know, if America was fighting in Ukraine right now, their biggest problem was, how can we get the daily Burger King to the soldiers in the front lines? You know, that's what the Americans would be worrying about fighting, you know, the Russians in Ukraine if we entered that war. It's just, how are we going to get Burger King to our soldiers effectively? Oh, we can get McDonald's, but I mean, that's no problem. McDonald's will be easy. Everybody, you know, will have McDonald's for, you know, but what about the Burger King for the soldiers? So, you know, yes, logistics is still a very thing, and for all that some people slam the Battle of the Bulge movie, and I do like the movie, and it's not maybe great great history, but you know, the guy Robert Shaw, who plays Hessler, the sort of the German Panzer commander in the movie, he's realizing that they're losing, and that they're capturing fresh cakes that have been, you know, individually, you know, some person in America made a fresh sort of fruit cake or some sort of cake relatively fresh in America, and send it as a package for their soldier, you know, whether husband, son, whatever, brother, whatever, and being flown across the Atlantic as you know, mail support, you know, packages to the soldiers in the front lines. And the Germans are capturing a few of these things, so that the Americans have that logistic train that they're flying airmail packages to their soldiers in the front lines for Christmas. So yeah, and I'm sure we still at some point, the Americans, we will unload a train manually, you know, box after box, and load it box after box onto a truck once in a while, just because a particular local reason will be there and will need to be done. But it's not that way, and so that really does matter. Nowadays we have standard IS. Well, yes, you also have the shipping container and guided anti-ship missiles hidden in standard ISO containers. Yeah, Ragar, I've seen some of that stuff. I think that's more fantasy than actuality. The anti-shipping missiles in there. We could do that. That somebody made mock-ups or whatever, but I don't know that anybody's actually built that into shipping containers. Actually done it. There's sort of good reasons why you wouldn't do that, but it could be done. I just don't think that any Navy or anybody is actually equipped with those containers, you know, hidden. What's the thing on the left of Army experience? Special Forces. You can see here, you are currently fielding 125 out of 225 Special Forces weight. Is what I think you're referring to. Oh yeah, and Frog Ice just said you just hadn't gotten that far down on the chat. Yeah. So that's all, you know. There's so much to learn. I've come to start saying I know a shit ton, a huge amount of about World War II, but there's so much more that I don't know than I do know. And I know some of you guys definitely know things I don't know about World War II. So it's not that I'm a know-it-all, because I know that I don't know it all. And there's so much to know. It's such a big topic, but to try to understand, you know, what's going on, it's a deep, deep subject. And that's what makes making a game like this hard to do, because there's a lot to simulate. That's why I'm so effing happy they finally did this, got the railroads going. supply hubs going. That really makes the game more better. Okay, let's see. They're pushing into there. So what we're going to do is take these two divisions and push there. This division's going to push there now. He's going to cross there. He's going to move up to there. And he's going to support that attack. There we go. That way, with a couple of things pushing, we might pincer another group there. Okay, well, you're in good enough shape to help out again. And you're going to support that attack there. Good. Okay, they're retreating up there. Good. We'll move the Slovaks in to the gap there. These guys are pushing that way. Those guys are falling back. Now that these guys are moving here, we're going to push with those 4 divisions that way, along with that division supporting there. That will allow them to occupy the hex without having reinforcements coming into it. You support that. Okay, they're counterattacking, and we're really weak. But that's okay. Okay, they're across, they're retreating. Now that they're counterattacking up that way, we're going to move in our armored and motorized forces that way. And you can attack there with their support. And we're going to grab the better division, better condition division, and counterattack that armor. Hopefully put it on more of a defensive position setup. I know they have a few divisions there, but still. Okay, now that they're moving into Kursk, these guys can join the push here. You can support that attack. Assisting Hungary. Seeking close cooperation, Hungary has requested that part of our general staff be sent to advise them on military matters. We could exert more influence in their country if we were to do so, and sending them some of our generals might make them competent ally in future. What is our response? Okay, political power. We can spare some generals. Ritter von Lieb, which is him here. I think we're going to do a token and machine pistols. Very good. That was that one. Okay. Improve infantry weapons. That looks nice to do. I don't have any free factories to build much. I know we're that. We'll let that be for the moment. Okay, we're also going to end the episode here. We're going to try to keep these a bit shorter because people, I think, like it that way. So see you next time for more, yes, even more Hearts of Iron.